So the big question we want to answer is this: how a hard-working individual who always followed the rules and who knows there is more to life than working 9 to 5 for 40 years to retire, how do you fast track to a lifestyle of wealth and freedom using property? That's the big question, and I'm here to give you the answers. My name is George Lumbana, and I'm a professional property investor and entrepreneur.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, depends when you are listening to this podcast. Hello, George. How are you doing?
Hello, Noel. I'm very well indeed. How are you?
Very well. Thank you very much. Today on this podcast, we're going to talk about something that might happen to you if you're not careful with HMO licenses and the way they work.
Yeah, so welcome everyone once again to our podcast every week. So we're just going to discuss today what's a rent repayment order, when do you get this, and how you can avoid it, most importantly. So a rent repayment order comes mainly when you have a HMO. Now, those of you that don't know what HMO is, a house of multiple occupation. And for you to operate a HMO, you need to get a HMO license that can be applied through your local council. Now, every council is different, and the regulations with the HMOs changes between council to council. But the rule of thumb is any house that's 3 stories or more requires a HMO license. Any houses that hold more than 5 non-related people becomes a HMO, and it needs a HMO license. And any property that has more than 5 rooms, so for instance 6 or 7 rooms, it needs a double kitchen or 2 sinks and 2 washing machines and so on. So that's to be compliant with the HMO. So it depends on the size and the space and the amount of people that you're gonna put in the property. Obviously, the license changes slightly and becomes mandatory on some aspects. Now, when you don't have the house prepared to hold these many people, or when the house doesn't meet the criteria for you to acquire a HMO license, and you don't have a HMO license, but you have people living in the property with the HMO but without the license. And let me just repeat myself there. If you have people living in the house but you don't have a license to back it up, then they could apply to the court as a rent repayment order. So what is this? Basically, it's when they can claim all the money they have paid to you in rent back from you, because you were renting illegally to them, and that's basically a very serious thing to look at, because basically the people stay for 1, 2, 3, 6 months, 1 year, or 2 years, and they have, after 6 years, once they moved out of the property, they've got up to 6 years to claim this money back from you. So if you have a property and it's not licensed, be very careful when you're renting, because these sort of things can happen to you. Now, how you can avoid all this? So before the property is rented, just make sure that the license is at least in process. So you don't have to have the license granted for you to rent the property, but at least you need to have the license already in process and the application submitted to the council. And while the application is ongoing, you're legally committed to provide for the HMO, and you're legally okay to rent the property. So that's the main concern. Now, these people can basically sue you over this problem at any time. And when I say at any time, is even if they're living in the property, they can actually claim all the money back that they've paid for the length of their stay. Or even if the people have moved out of the property already, they've got up to 6 years to claim this money back from you. So it's something very straightforward for them. It really depends on the conditions and everything on the property. But evidence is pretty much easy to find, easy to gather if the tenants are putting it together. So in terms of finding the statements from the other tenants, taking pictures of the property, if you don't have smoke alarms, if there is no doors, if etc. If you don't have fire panels or blankets or extinguishers, all that sort of thing, is very easy for them to claim that the property is not licensable, or it doesn't have a HMO license because of those things. So be very careful when you're renting your HMOs, and most importantly, if you are planning to rent a HMO, make sure that the application is at least put forward before you rent any room. So that is basically what a rent replacement order is all about. So
George, let me ask you a question. So if you had, let's say, 5 people living in the property, and then one decides to take you to court for this, then would you have to pay rent just back to him, or how does it work? Would you have to
basically, if every tenant is suing you about the same issue, then pretty much everyone is engaged in the process, and any order that's made by the judge then basically will cover all the tenants. And then basically it's not black and white. There's a lot of gray area in between, and there's obviously a lot of things to prove. But if the order fails against you, then obviously the judge will decide how much you will have to pay back to these tenants. It's similar to when you don't protect the deposits. They can claim up to 3 times the deposits that they paid, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to get 3 times the deposit in the court. So it really depends on a lot of the cases, and it really depends on the condition of the property and the claim, how it's filed.
So that's very, very interesting, George. That's why I believe as landlords we need to know about regulations and laws, and know what consequences bring if you don't follow what needs to be done. So thank you for that, George. Hope you guys learned a very powerful thing here about HMOs, about clever tenants trying to get money back, and well, hopefully it doesn't happen to you. But thank you, George, for that, and see you in the next episode.
Thank you all. So for those of you who have the cash but don't have the knowledge, we can help you here at Property Strategies. We can design a roadmap, or we can do a all-done-for-you service. And all you have to do is send us your inquiry at info@propertystrategies.co.uk. And for those of you who don't have the cash and you don't have the knowledge, but you want to start getting started in property, we can also help you. As I said, you can send us your inquiry of what exactly you want to achieve and what you want to do, and then we can tailor a roadmap exactly what you want to do and how you can achieve it, how to put the theory into practice.